dun, 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 dun. Oh God, you're live. Here we go. Another Saturday, another live stream, another Saturday morning. List of questions. Let's put it over here. List of questions that I have to go through. It doesn't end. It's never over. It's never over. All right, let's make sure I have the questions on the side right here. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We'll give people, the generic 5 minutes to let people join. Then we'll just knock out some quick questions from the past 4 weeks, 5 weeks actually, and we'll go over a couple updates. Pretty basic stuff. As always, leave a like on the stream so it gets promoted. What is this? Rubber band. Great. Yeah, oh, nice scarf. Very fashionable. Very fashionable. I actually got quite a few questions from between the last live stream and now, so we got a lot to answer. A lot of common questions this time. I think mostly because I've done a couple videos with the baby Savannah monitors, and that has led to a lot of not just Savannah monitor questions, but a lot of baby reptile questions, particularly lizards that people have. So, and I saw a lot of the same common question being asked. So it'll be good to go. It'll be good to go through those questions and answer what the people have asked about. And then, as always, you guys can ask any questions through here. It's Father Jimmy. He's a ball python, male, big stocky boy. This is as big as he'll get. Hello, Bev. Hello. So we'll break it all down. We got about 3 more minutes before we get going. And we'll get to that. Right. Oh, hopefully everyone's had a good week, and hopefully you guys are going to have a good weekend since it's just starting. Thanks for being here this morning. And hopefully if you guys have questions, I'll be able to answer them. And yes, we have questions already. We always do. What do we say here, Nate Zilla? I recently had a ball python dumped on me from a friend. Oh, what a great friend. She's a few weeks old, and I'm completely new to snakes. Hey, Nate, this is a ball python. Glad you asked. I have her in a 40-gallon right now. How am I supposed to keep humidity up? Okay, good question, Nate. Well, you have her on substrate, I'm guessing, so you can always spray the substrate. You have some type of water bowl in there. So if you have any type of above heating, you can put the water bowl under that, which then will put the direct heat on the water bowl, which will cause evaporation, which will increase the humidity. But normally your humidity should be fine unless you're in a super dry home. I mean, for ball pythons, and for most snakes, outside of when they're shedding, and this is minus some of the Amazonian species that come from super humid climates, most snakes are good at about 30% humidity to 40% for year round. That's more than enough humidity to prevent lung cracking. So you typically your home humidity is okay. Now, sometimes depending on where you are, you live in a dry place, or in winters, You may have natural gas heating for your furnace, which is known to dry the air. So, but most natural gas furnaces have a whole humidifier on it, so that typically keeps it moist. And then you could always get a humidifier for the room if you really did it. Yes, surface mulch. I have humidity good at night, but the screen top really hurts. It gets to like 38. No, 38 is fine. So you can so for my snakes, I do cover most of, not all, but most of the screen top. That helps control the temperatures a little bit better and the humidity. But no, for year round, 38 is plenty. Um, so I guess I can break that down for you, and we can go. So the reason why you need some level of humidity with snakes are constantly breathing, and what will happen is if their humidity is super low for a long period of time, their lungs will start to dry. And then once their lungs dry, they will crack, giving them a respiratory infection and can lead to death. Now, there's ways to fix that humidity, basically making a nebulizer and medication. Now, but if you're at 38, you're in a good spot. Also, if there's a water bowl the snake can soak in, the snake is able to go into it. You should it's harder with large snakes obviously, but you should have a decent sized water bowl depending on the size of your snake. This snake fits really good in a large Tupperware like that you would use to store food in. That's just where I got it. It was cheap. It was at Meyer. It was like a 4 pack for $20, and it fits a 5 foot ball python in it. They just coil right up into it, put their whole body underwater, so it's super easy. Um, and when they shed, though, 38's low. When they're shedding, you're going to try to get it just for the shedding time, and really more so near the end of the shed. But if you're new to snake owning, you may not know the difference. But when they're shedding, right, you'll see their skin will start to look a little bit more dull because that's the dead skin, and their eyes will be blue in their blue phase. Typically, that's when you want to start increasing humidity until they shed, and then you're just spraying it down. If you have to mist the tank 2, 3, 4 times a day, that's fine. But then once they shed, you want the humidity to get back low again because high humidity is actually bad for them as well and can lead to fungal growth in the tank, and then they're breathing in the fungus and then lead to fungus disease of their lungs because then you got fungus growing in their lungs. Also treatable with antifungus medication, but you try to prevent that stuff from happening. So no, your 38 is spot on for the year. It's spot on. Increase it up when they're shedding, and then you can just naturally let it dry out. It's not like you have to get in there and dry the substrate or change it out. No, it's fine. Both high and low humidity for the snake to cause real damage has to take place over an extended period of time. Now, most snakes are also active at night when it's darker. So they actually do most of their heavy breathing at night. And sometimes people are lucky where their humidity is actually higher at night. So it tends to work out, which is really good. All right. So as always, guys, if you have questions, throw them in here. I'm gonna just shoot through these popular questions. Most people watch the stream after the stream is, not live, but I get to answer all of their questions, and it just lets me do live questions if they come up, which is good, and show off some animals if you want to see them. But okay, thank you for all the information. I'm already attached to her. LOL. Is that one full grown? Uh, Well, so full grown, right? So snakes and reptiles will grow their entire life. They'll never stop growing as long as you're feeding them. They will always, always, always grow. But what most people mean by full grown, like we'll call it majority of the growing, the end of the growth spurt, is it adult sized? Yeah, this is a male ball python. It's about how big they get. 3 to 5 feet for a typical full size male, 4 to 6 feet for a typical full size female. Why is the female larger? Because the female has to carry eggs inside of her. So through evolution, she has a larger body to hold more eggs. The males don't have to hold eggs, so they're a little bit smaller. Um, so It's pretty easy to become attached to a snake, especially a ball python. Although there are friendly snakes like hog noses and some corn snakes and milk snakes and stuff like that. This has got good size to it, though, right? This has got good size. I could sit here for hours and he would just hang out like this. And if you stand or, someplace where they can't get, they'll just sit on your shoulders for indefinitely the whole day. So, and they'll never bite you and they won't do anything. So, yeah, it's really nice. Um, so, no, good for you. Good for you. All right. So, I'm going to go through some questions. If you get more questions based off of stuff you hear me say, you can ask them about anything, or if you think of any other questions, ask away. Also, one last question. How do you feel about live feeding and UVB lights? I've been told about 50 different things. Yeah, good questions. So snakes do not need UVB light. Um, they hide all day in real life. They're just barely out in the sun, especially ball pythons. They sit in caves, tight as can be, and then they hunt because they have infrared heat sensors. They hunt and are active in the pitch black of night. You can successfully keep ball pythons in rack systems for their whole life, and they will live super healthy their whole life. Ball pythons also can get stressed in too big of an enclosure. So a lot of the times people think they're doing their snake a favor, depending on what kind of snake it is, by just putting it in this giant enclosure. But you got to know your type of snake, and you can cause a lot of stress. I haven't seen documented any 60 plus man, even 40 plus year old healthy ball pythons that have come from large enclosures. Not saying there are none. I haven't seen them. They're not documented anywhere. But what we do have documented are extremely healthy 40, 50, 60, almost 70-year-old ball pythons from rack systems or from smaller tanks, because that's how the snake lives. And you'll notice in the tank you have, your ball python is going to be coiled up. Now, you need to have variance, right? They're going to be coiled up in the water bowl, they're going to be coiled up on the cool side, or they're going to be coiled up on the hot side. You just have to have those three distinct places, and they do great. And then when you want to take them out, you take them out. Now, live feedings, I'm completely against it, and there's a big reason for that. Not that I think it's inhumane, although there are some snakes that kill slower, and so the creature can suffer. But there's also people who will kill their rat or mouse right before they feed it, so then it doesn't suffer. But uh, feeding live is very dangerous to the snake, especially if you don't have a fast killer like a ball python. Almost all the ball pythons I rescue have scars on the top of their heads. They're missing an eye. Non-venomous snakes are very slow killers. These rats have super sharp claws, super sharp teeth. They beat the crap out of, permanently scar, and oftentimes kill the snake, especially when the snake gets larger and you have to feed a larger rat. Okay. But also, ball pythons can go off food for a long time. So people will put rats, mice in the enclosure and the snake won't go after it. Even when I feed frozen thaw, the snake doesn't go after it. I don't want the rat biting the snake in the eye. The snake is going to try to run away. It's not going to fight. And in an enclosure, the snake cannot run away. And then the other bad part is naturally it's parasites. And when you have a frozen rat that's been frozen for at least 48 hours, so if you're buying in bulk, they're frozen, any type of parasite is dead. So it's actually healthier and safer for the snake to eat frozen thawed for all the reasons I listed: damage to the snake, parasites, things like that. Um, Man, there's been some studies where some snakes have eaten the thing while it's still alive, and then it's been kicking and scratching the inside of the snakes. And actually, some rats have cut open internally the snake's stomach. It's not a good thing. Very dangerous. Venomous snakes, a little bit different. Venomous snakes are a little bit different. They do the venom, the thing dies, then they eat it. So we're looking at completely different things. Now, I get it. Some snakes won't take frozen, but almost all snakes will take something that you kill right before you feed it, and then you transition it to feeding frozen from live to frozen. And typically, especially with ball pythons, they catch on pretty quick. It's you only need to do one or two transitional feedings, and then they're good to go. You just need to kick on in their brain that that frozen thing, obviously you're feeding it thawed, but they know it's food. Yep. Yeah, it's true. Well, and sometimes like people will be like, "Oh, I caught a mouse at my facility. You know, my where do you want to feed it to your snakes?" God, no, I don't. That thing's probably loaded with internal and external parasites. Why would I want to introduce that? And then you know what's going to be loaded with those parasites? My snake. I don't want to do that. And even if you bought them from a breeder who practice it to do humane and clean, it can happen, right? They're pooping, they're eating their own poop, they're peeing on each other. I want my rats to be CO2 gassed, rinsed clean, and then frozen. Boom. Can't do anything better. Never touch dry rodent poopy. Yeah, that's true. Um, okay. If you got others, just throw it. So let me hit a few things though from the questions I got listed here because I have to be out like right at 10 because I have company at 12 and there's a lot to do. When isn't there? Woe is me. First world problems. Except I don't live in the first world. Okay, so the baby. Oh God, do you think nocturnal geckos need UVB? Nope, absolutely not. I don't have any UVB on my leopard geckos. I've had leopard geckos live into their 20s. They again, it's a creature that doesn't come out at night. And one of the reasons for that, though, I guess I should hit snakes. Snakes don't have a problem with calcium because they're eating live prey. There's natural bone in there, and there's natural bone marrow. Very easy to digest and solve. Geckos, especially leopard geckos, a lot of the times they'll just eat raw calcium. They'll just lick it as a treat. They do in the wild calcium deposits and whatnot. So you can put a little bowl with calcium. If you want to put calcium with D3, that's fine too. Although no study has shown with leopard geckos that the calcium with D3 has done better, and they'll just lick it throughout the day. But again, you supplement their bugs anyways, so you're good to go. So the baby Savannah monitors, everyone always wants to ask. I did that great video about power feeding and stunted growth that not a lot of people watch, but I think it's one of the most important reptile videos probably on the internet. I'm sure there's been typed studies about it, but there's so much confusion about power feeding and about stunting that, um, but there's never any side by side comparisons that happened at the same time. And so that's why I did this healthy version to show a size difference that could lead, if you kept going into the extreme to power feeding or stunting, um, by just feeding one slightly less and feeding one slightly more, keeping them both within their healthy weights, but at the opposite ends of the healthy weight scale. So people could really see if you took it to the extreme, either way, what would happen. A lot of the times we've seen, we'll be like, look at the snake, it's power fed or it's over obese, and they just show it. And then they're like, look at this other reptile, it's stunted and it's small. Or they'll show you another perfectly healthy one. But, things look, especially reptiles, they look very big after they've just been fed. They also look very skinny after they've just taken a big crap and it's their day to eat and they haven't eaten yet. So, unless you have a true side by side comparison, you don't know what the heck you're looking at. I could be looking at a snake that hasn't eaten in 3 days compared to a snake you just fed a turkey to an hour before. That's not a true comparison. So I wanted to do as truthful as a healthy comparison would let you, and then just expand each in that same direction by like double. So it's a big deal. Same age lizard, living in the same tank, eating on the same days, and eating the exact same food. Just one gets one every feeding, which again with babies, multiple feedings a day, one gets two less of whatever they're eating per feeding. That's a big difference. and it turned into and visually, it's a shocking difference. Um, but people are like, I don't want to power feed this. I don't want to overfeed this. I don't want to stunt because of this. It's You have to do both in the big extreme, especially when you're starting with a baby. And that's a very important video. And I know it's not going to get the millions of views. It's not a manic video where I'm running around scaring people with my reptile. Oh, almost getting bit by a snake, and doing clickbait titles or the world's largest snake. And then, all that fake stuff that other reptile channels do. But at least the stuff gets out there. So maybe if someone Googles or they come on YouTube and they type in power feeding a reptile or how not to power feed or something. I don't know how, depending on what you type, what shows up. Only the YouTube overlords do. That video is there. But with that video and with other videos, people have and this is what I get asked a lot. So I have particularly a lot, and I always do, a lot of scratches all over my arms. And I don't know if, oh, yeah, you can kind of see them here. And people will be like, or on the backs of my hands in my videos. And people will say, is this just because you own reptiles? Is this one bad thing about reptiles? Are your reptiles crazy? Blah, blah, blah. And those are all great, welcome questions because that's a good thing to pick up on. And the answer to all of those is no. But what I do is a little bit different. So, one, if you do proper nail care for your reptiles, you should never have scratches because they should never have those hypodermic tips. They'll be smooth, they'll be rounded, they'll be dull. They won't scratch your clothes. They won't scratch your couches, your carpet. And a lot of times when I see people say, oh, I don't want this type of hammock for my bearded dragon because its nails will get caught in there. That you have done improper nail care and you're not doing proper nail care. I've done plenty of videos. A bearded dragon's nail should be flat at the tip and should rest flat on the ground. But I don't just do that. So I take in rescues and help rescues, and I've done lots of videos of them. A lot of the times these rescues have no proper nail care done. So they have severely overgrown nails. They have severely sharp nails. And depending on the situation, now I do have long gloves that I can wear, and I do wear them for certain times and doing certain nail trimmings. So but when a reptile comes in that's rescued, sometimes they're very timid, they're very scared. They can be flailing around like crazy people when you try to do their nails. And sometimes it can be too traumatizing to do all the nails. So you do one hand every other day. You let them calm down. You don't want to give anyone a stroke. You don't want to give anyone a heart attack, right? So you can get scratched in that process. And a lot of times people say, why aren't you wearing gloves? Why aren't you doing this? Or when I do this with gloves, no matter the thinnest gloves you could put on, surgical thin gloves, you do not have the same feel and the same precision as you do barehanded. And that's why for a lot of the things, the other thing is babies. When you're raising baby lizards, ones that climb as babies, not bearded dragons, you don't have to worry. But when you're raising monitor lizards that climb, Link, the quince monitor, a chameleon, my baby Savannah monitors, and you're raising them healthy, man, their nails grow so fast. I'm for the baby Savannahs, I am constantly trimming those things. But they crawl onto your hand, and the nail is so sharp. As soon as it touches you, it punctures the skin, even with barely any body weight on it. So just them walking on you. And so you just got to keep them trimmed up to date. That's all that it is. So it happens, especially depending on the type of lizard. Now, it's not going to happen with a snake. It's not going to happen with a bearded dragon unless you get it way out of control. And it's not going to happen with any adult lizard that you're doing nail care for. But it's just one of the things you have to do. Does it hurt? No. Now, I imagine if somehow it put its foot like right into my eyeball, probably we'd be looking at problems. But let's not do that. And just like baby humans, you know, remember when like you have a newborn and you're putting like little mitts on them because they just flail their arms around. Sometimes they just gouge the crap out of their own face. But like you have to let their nail grow to a certain length before you can safely trim it. So they don't have little mitts like we do for human children that are infants, newborns. So it's one of those things that happens, right? Not a big deal. They're just surface level little cuts. They don't even bleed. They're just red. They don't leave a scar. There's no deep tissue damage. But it is something to know about and not be scared about. Now, with that being said, it's your responsibility as the owner to know that. So, because what if you have other family or friends or company that comes over and wants to hold your lizard, see pet? Let's say you got a super sociable lizard. It's got sharp nails. You'd be like, okay, yeah, I can give you this thing, but know that it might give you a few little scratches. It might cling onto your shirt. You always want to make people aware because you can set up a bad encounter. So the night before I ever go to a reptile show, everyone that I'm going to be bringing, I make sure their nails are so filed and so smooth and so rounded because I want to be able to hand the reptile to a child, have the reptile walk on top of the child, have the the child be petting them and the reptile just puts its hand on it, and I don't want any of that possibility to happen if it's going to be a reptile that has interaction. So these are things that as a responsible owner you need to know because let's be real, even if you have a pet snake or you have a pet lizard, the lizard may be calm with you, the snake may be calm with you, but how is it towards even other family members that live in your home? That could be all over the place. And so you need to know, even for behavior, if I say, okay, I'm going to give you the snake right here, I'm going to give you this snake. He's going to maybe smell you. He's going to maybe move around. If I put him on your shoulder like this, he's probably going to wrap around your neck. Don't worry. He's not going to choke you, but it is normal for him to maybe squirm around or move. You need to know what that's going to do, and you need to prep the other people. So, yeah, if you give someone a lizard that has sharp claws, even if it's friendly, but it just starts moving, people are like, ow, 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 ow. You don't want them to drop the lizard, throw the lizard. Again, that's just a bad thing you set up. Maybe it's getting clung in their shirt. Maybe they got an expensive Ralph Lauren or, a Polo. I don't even know any of the other brands, you know, and you don't want them to, oh, my sweater. Oh, it's getting bad experience for the lizard, bad experience for you, bad experience for the person holding it, and bad experience for anyone watching because they're just going to remember that bad experience. So it's very important. You need to prep people for what could happen, right? If you put this snake on someone who's maybe a little hesitant and they're just gonna be like, oh, it's moving. Oh, it's doing that. Of course it's moving. What does that even mean? Oh, it's breathing. Yeah, of course it's breathing. But you need to prep them for all that. We know that. If you go to touch its head, the snake may twitch back. It may be in fear. I don't know if I can get Father Jimmy to do that. Let me see if I just kind of poke his face. No, but sometimes if I were to scare him, he'll jut back. They need to know that's what can happen, and you need to prepare them. I know you're a good boy. He's got a big scar right on his head from live feedings. So you need to prepare them for all of that. Okay, will there be more of these Savannah monitor videos? Yeah, there will be when I want to show more things off with the babies. Also, I have to film a video on Artemis and Apollo coming up because I really want to show how tamed down Apollo is becoming. And again, I don't want to take credit, but Savannah monitors are becoming very popular pets. Okay, very popular, and they're extremely easy to have as pets, and they are amazing lizards. Amazing lizards. I tell people if here's two lizards. There's three I wish you could do, but here's two. If you have no problem with feeding bugs and getting a dubia roach colony, and you want a tame, awesome lizard, it's a Savannah monitor. If you don't want to feed bugs and you want to feed greens primarily, but you want that large lizard, you get some type of rock iguana, Cuban rock, Cayman brack, rhino. Really, at that point, you're just looking at them and which one looks cooler, but not green because you're going to have a lot of work to do. And if you're okay with feeding meat and you're really okay with a large size, no, not Asian water monitor, get a black throated monitor. The Asian water monitor really should have a large water fixture, and it could be a standing tub or pool. But now we're really talking about as big as the black throat, but also needs a kiddie pool. That's a lot of the times a lot of people's questions, especially for indoor. But if you can make it work, then by all means, they'd come in fourth place, or really they'd come in fifth place because I put Quint's monitor before them. But because of that, I'm here with Elon Love Love. Oh, Fumi! Oh, it's so good to see you, Fumi. I'm so glad to see from you. I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad he's doing well. Oh, it's just so good to see you in chat. So good to see you in chat. Um, but again, all of those have upsides and they all have downsides. But the downsides, I don't even think the downsides are really downsides. When you bought like a computer game, it would say like minimum requirements and then like recommended requirements. Those are just the requirements. So I guess they're not even downsides. You just need to know these are the requirements. And some are typically easier to meet than others for certain people. Now, yeah, by all means, if you're a rich millionaire and you're going to have a room constructed with an indoor waterfall and blah blah blah, then you can put whatever the heck you want in it, right? But most people, they're going to put something in their bedroom, they're going to put something in their office, you know, they're going to put something in the living room, a pet room, while a Savannah monitor or a rock iguana are the two things that you choose. And if you want something that's even easier, but you still want loving interaction, snake, ball python, super simple. But all of the things I listed are very smart and do require handling and taming. But if you're starting as a baby or one that just hasn't had bad interactions with humans, it's really easy to fix. Um, Even wild caught is pretty easy to fix. It's harder if you're, let's say, taking in a rescue, someone's surrendering, and they've been very negative towards that. That thing is scarred very mentally towards human interaction and things like that. So it's still very doable. It just is harder. That is all. Okay, next question. People always ask, going down here, and I've said this before. They're struggling to find good vets. Guys, that's what it is. The other thing, and basically vet related questions. And I don't ever want to trash vets, but a lot of reptile vets are trash. And the problem is also reptile vets are very hard to find. Now, there's a host of reasons. I kind of will go over them more. One is it's very expensive to be a reptile vet. You have to pay for your certifications every year, your licensing, and all these special things. You may have to pay to go to special classes if you want to be a good reptile vet. And then also, the information is kind of all over the place. So it would be hard for a reptile vet. There's not much training. There's not much known information. Um, and then you're paying a lot of money for that. And so the reason why most vets don't do it is because they won't see a return on that money spent. There's no gain. There's no gain from spending that capital because let's say you're in a practice that you would see three, four, maybe five reptiles a year. You're spending way more money to be able to see those than you're getting from those. And no matter what, guys, it's a business, right? It's your job, that's your income, that's your livelihood. That would be a negative expense right there. Not great. Um, and then on top of that, because the information is still, we're not there with reptile vets, obviously. People have heard me say this, but we're where the birds were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when bird vets couldn't do anything. And now aviation, uh, bird vets are way better. They're doing surgeries, they're putting wings in casts, they're doing all these amazing things, repairing beaks with plastic and 3D printers. And we have some of that going on with tortoise shell repairs and things like that, but we're not at that level. And so maybe you are a reptile vet who you see a lot of bearded dragons in your practice, most common lizard pet. Now, and so there's really been no need. Now someone comes in with a caiman lizard, and this thing looks like a fruit by the foot. It's orange, it's yellow, it's neon orange, neon yellow, and neon green and red. I mean, this thing is multicolored. What? You're going to read from some book? You're going to read from Google? You have no experience? Yeah, you see ball pythons. Now someone comes in with a 20-foot reticulated python. What? Someone comes in with a black-throated monitor, with a white-throated monitor, with a quince monitor. Um, these are things you may never have seen at your vet before. You may not even have done any training on them. They probably get training on lizards in general, bearded dragons, and snakes in general, and maybe ball pythons because those are popular. But you you need to know these things because whenever you're buying a reptile, you well, first of all, which is unfortunate, we do buy the things of unlike a dog, a cat, even livestock, horses, cows, man, the veterinarian for horses, cows, all that stuff is so good. I'm in Michigan here. If you ever watched, like, what is it, The Incredible Dr. Pol, he's up north a good handful of hours, but that's where he is. And they're doing horses and cows, and it's fascinating, right? But we're not there with reptiles, unfortunately. And so you kind of do the thing where you pray your reptile just never gets sick, especially if you have something super exotic. Um, because you might be up the creek, right? And the other thing though is when you are buying reptiles or any animal, you always want to look at before something bad happens, where are the vets? Even when you buy a dog or something, where is the closest vet or the closest good vet? Is probably what we should be saying. And, so just like, okay, if you're buying a home that's in like a flood zone, uh, maybe I need flood insurance. Maybe I should. So same thing. So it's not, it's not that the vets are bad. Hello, Double Dragon Hotel. Good morning. It's not that the vets are bad. It's just that there's the experience is not there. Now, there are some great experienced vets, especially if you live in Florida or Texas, someplace where you do have way more exotic. And then they get, because then they have the experience, they get to see and work with these things. If you treat one bearded dragon a year, even though have the license to treat a bearded dragon, how great are you going to be? Not too great, just because the experience is not there. So we have two problems. We have the experience from firsthand experience from seeing it is not there. And then we have a lack of even being able to teach it very well because the experience isn't even there for teachers. Now, we do have things like in other countries, like if you look at Beardy Vet from Australia, what they're doing with bearded dragon procedures, they're rebuilding the jaws, amputations, reattachments of limbs. I mean, removing of tumors, the stuff that they do there is fascinating. But bearded dragons are like squirrels are, right? In Australia, they're all over the place. They're in people's backyards. They're here, they're there. It's much different. So maybe you have that experience there, but that's not over here. And sure, he does seminars and he does posts and he shows all this information. But I could read a book right now on how to perform brain surgery, and then a half hour after reading that, someone hands me a scalpel and lays someone down in front of me. How well do you think that brain surgery is going to go? Now, I read the step by step instructions on how to do it. It's probably not going to go well. Chance of life, I mean, let's not say zero, but it's going to be pretty low. And so that's what we run into. So even when even when the literature starts becoming more common, and we have the concrete ways on how to do this, how to do this, how to do this, and people are like, well, what do you mean? Well, let me break this down very easy. Because people say, oh, I look how to do this on YouTube now, blah, blah, blah. Remember cookbooks and you following the recipe and it says mix this for 2 minutes and put this much of this in and then bake it for this long of time. And you followed everything, boom, boom, boom. And then you get like just junk. Exactly. So people shouldn't forget about that. So that's why I don't try to say that vets are bad per se. In fact, a lot of them want to try and want to help. It's just not there. That's the problem. Okay. Let's keep looking at this. We got about 20 minutes left. That's very good. Hopefully, you guys are following along. I'm not putting anyone to sleep. I just get asked about the vets all the time, and people say that they're worthless, and they're really not. I think a lot of them are really trying. They just don't have the experience, and there's like no place for them to learn. Sucks. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, you had already asked about live feeding. Just out of coincidentally, it was on my list. People had been asking. So Nate asked about live feeding for snakes, took care of that. And by the way, the live feeding thoughts that I have passed around, and most people share the same that are, but I always asked about snakes. It actually transitions into lizards and all reptiles as well. Now I've done it. I've fed my monitor lizards live food because I have bought live food that when transitioning and the snake wouldn't eat. I'm not going to throw this thing outside. It's just going to die. So I'm going to, I mean, not painlessly, but I'm going to not waste it either. But just know that. I mean, I buy little feeder minnows from the store for my turtles. Those are live. I could get cut up fish. So, but those same principles still apply. I would never buy a full size giant XL rat for Smog to eat. That would be the battle of the century. He eats things whole. He just swallows everything down. I could see him biting that thing and that thing just clawing the crap out of his face. In fact, I think I showed a video of for Smog and Ventress, my large black throats, and I bought like a hunk of beef for like a pot roast and just put it in front of them. They couldn't eat any of it. They were trying to bite it, their lips, they couldn't get their teeth onto it. They don't have cutting teeth, and they just left it alone. A hunk of fresh beef just right in front of them. Nothing they could do. They got bored of it, they got frustrated, and they left. I had to then cut it up and feed it, to them. But so also know what you're doing with that. Okay. Let's see here. What do you think? That kind of falls in with that. Falls in with that. Also, guys, remember if you do have any questions, just throw them out here. Would you ever consider mating your Savannah monitors? Uh, so everyone asks me this question, and it's very ironic because attempting to mate my Savannah monitors is what led to my best friend Simba dying because of eggs that were laid outside of season and him eating them. And again, that's just nobody's fault. It's just something that had happened. But that was the plan, was to breed Simba down and things like that. Now you would think with all of that, I'm done. No, because that was a fluke. It was a 1 in a million thing and it happened and it was bad. But I still want to breed, try to see if I can get Savannah monitors to breed, not to sell, but for myself to have. I would like to tame down, like I have Artemis now, who's super tame, female. Apollo is showing very good signs of being tamed, but then I have Sunfire and Moonshadow. So if either of them show those advanced signs, I would like to get a clutch, and that way, the clutch happens 6, 7, 8 years down the line of the age of the lizards. That way, then I would have the next generation for my pet and can work on it. Now, a clutch will lead to more than one surviving reptile, hopefully. So, then I would go. But there's no value really in breeding reptiles anymore unless you're doing it on a mass scale. How can I spend, think about it, spending thousands of dollars a year to breed the Savannahs? Let's say I don't know, let's say I get five. Let's just make the number easy. Let's say I get five hatches. That's good turnover. 8 eggs, you get 5 out of them to hatch. We're doing good. So say you get 5 hatches. Now it comes time to sell them. Well, do I want to keep any for myself? That's going to cut out of that 5. But let's say I'm selling all 5 of them. I've spent thousands. Let's say I spent 1,000 to get all to happen because I needed more food because my Savannahs are in together and the incubation and the heat and all this. Let's say it's $1,000 for the whole year. It's not bad. Now all of a sudden, because you're going to be breeding, so you got to feed more than you would normally feed. You got to get that female very healthy. Now I have 5 eggs. They hatch. I'm going to sell all 5. Let's say I do a markup. I'm going to sell the 5 of them for $50 each. Like even if I did $100 each, which would be pretty expensive for a Savannah monitor, you know, that's $500. Now I'm negative 500. Well, that didn't go very well, did it? No. So people have these these great ideas of they're going to be reptile breeders, and a lot of home reptile breeders go broke because the cost of the reptiles are coming way down, just plummeting, right? Savannah monitor at a trade show, $15. $15 you can get them. You're not even paying shipping, baby, at a trade show. Now a little bit more if it's an adult and it's confirmed male and it's friendly, get $200 to $500. Okay, but now you're holding on to that Savannah monitor for 3-4 years, taming it, confirming it's male, taking care of it, spending more money. So I would like to get one clutch for a passion project for me to keep the lineage going, to keep training on them. But no, some mass idea of making money. Nah. Now, snake breeding is different and it's changed. You used to have massive snake breeding, and the problem, because they're a little bit cheaper, they're easier to keep, they don't eat as much, they don't require all the same electricity, they lay big clutches of eggs, and people buy them, and they used to be expensive. We're also seeing the cost of snakes plummet. So if you think breeding normal ball pythons is good, that's going to get you nowhere. Again, at a trade show, $30 for a normal, even at Petco with their markup, they have overhead. They had to buy it for $30, and now let's say they sell it for 60, 70, $80, $100 cheaper if it's on sale. They've paid a lot of overhead for that. They're paying staff, they're feeding it. So the money is not there. So if you're breeding really, really expensive morphs, new morphs, you got to get in that game early because eventually that morph will spread, more breeders will be breeding it, and its price will also plummet. Now, where did we see this? So let's look at Asian water monitors. Remember the Black Dragon, the 100% melanistic that everyone was selling for 10, 15, 20, 30, $30,000 5 years ago. 5 years ago, 30. What has happened to them today? $3,000. $3,000 in 5 years. $3,000. Because the mysticism has worn off. Some of those sunset ball pythons 10 years ago were $50,000 each. $2,000 to $5,000 now. Look at that plummet in just 5 years, half a decade. So trying to buy that lizard to even start. If you bought a baby sunset and you're like, I'm going to be breeding this. Okay, so you buy the baby for $50,000. Got to wait at least 2 years before it can be bred. And let's say you buy 2. Now you're $100,000 in the hole, but you're like, hey, each baby's $50,000. I just need to have 2 babies and I broke even, and everything past 2 is we've made money. Okay, except by the time you can start having eggs, 2 years has gone by. So now they're not $50,000 anymore. They're $30,000. It's been 2 years. You're not panicking because you're like, hey, if I have 4, I'll break even. That's not bad. I only got 1 pair, but they typically lay a clutch of 14 eggs. I'll be good. Now it comes time for breeding. And they don't breed. They don't breed. They don't lock. She doesn't lay eggs. She lays infertile eggs. Now you're like, oh boy. Now it's been 5 years down the line, 6 years, 7 years, and now you're getting a pair. Great. Now that 50, so you spent 100 grand on your snakes. Now the babies are going for 2 grand each. Woo! That's a lot of snakes you gotta produce to get up to 100 grand. That's a lot of snakes, and as it goes year by year, that cost goes up, down, and your cost. And remember, the 100 grand was just buying the 2 snakes. You've been buying them food for 5 years. You've been paying electrical on them for 5 years. You've been doing quite a lot. There aren't many people breeding Savannahs, none in the U.S. People know the difference between a CBB and an import and will pay a good price. So they're being bred in the U.S. to be clear. It's not huge. It's probably not online shipping. Where I got the 2 Savannah babies from, they were bred right there. The mom and dad are right there. In fact, um, Kylene Brown, I believe she's in here. Her Savannah was captive bred. They have the parents right there at the pet shop. So, and there's definitely more Savannahs being bred in the US. The problem is they're just not super popular. And they don't, you see a captive bred baby come on Morph Market from time to time. I should say from time to time. I should say every year. And even the captive bred baby is like $100 when it's a baby. So, and then you have to pay shipping, so it's more. But the breeding in the US has picked up for Savannahs because they are more popular now. But I think the breeding has always been there. We just didn't see um, it as public. And also it was not popular because the lizard's cheap. And who wants to spend the time? Like black throats. 5 years ago, there was 3 or 4 black-throated monitor known. 3 or 4 well-known black-throated monitor breeders. Probably was more, but these are the big guys who had presence on the internet. Well, now in the US, big guys, so presence on the internet, probably 15, 16 that I could think of off the top of my head, obviously counting the ones that were there before. But let's look at it. I have Smog and Ventress in a tank together, perfectly friends. There's been some mating on and off, but at any point, they could breed and lay eggs. All of a sudden, I've bred them, right? And there's a lot of people, like the owner of Shrek and things like that. There's a lot of people who have male and female Savs, male and female Blackthroats living together permanently. So, you have that random chance of the stuff happening. But I think when we say breeders, we're talking about people who just have them living together, who are actively trying to make money, who every year do everything they can to get these things to breed. And um, thanks. So, and I think that's a little bit different. But we have a lot of owners who own multiple sexes and have them living together just fine. And for whatever reason, they could breed at any time. Thank you. Thank you. So I got to get ready to wrap this guys up. I got one more question to answer from the sheet, but if anyone has any questions about any reptile questions, throw them in the chat and I'll get to them. But again, yeah, we're not going to see big, reptile mill type breeding of Savs, I think, ever, unless the price for the Savs goes way up. Even let's say it went up to $500. I can't see a normal Savannah going for more expensive than that, unless someone starts introducing some really weird color morphs. I don't think that's enough to invest, for, because that price is only going to come down slightly as more people start doing it. So I don't see. I think it would need to be $1,000 per minimum per captive bred for a normal unknown sex of a baby from 2 tame parents, and then hopefully you're getting nice full clutches every year to for any reptile to try to hopefully break close to even. Okay, let me see. Where's that one last question that I had from my sheet? Okay. Yep. 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 Okay. 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 This is a big question. Would you have a pet Burmese python? I absolutely love Burmese pythons. I love the yellow and white. I love the orange and white. I just love those creamsicle colors. I couldn't, in good faith, recommend that snake to anybody. It gets so long. I know not as long as the reticulated python, but it gets so long, and you need to feed rabbits and you need to do this and that. Now, if you can confirm and get a super dwarf, now you're looking at a 6 foot Burmese python. That's much cooler. Now, there are people who have the abilities to keep a large snake like that, but I have to tell you, that is not a one person snake when it gets older, when it's 15, 16 feet. It's not a one person snake. You need to have two people to be safe, no matter how friendly you think your snake is. So now, if you live by yourself, you're relying on someone to come over and this and that. And it's a lot of work. They take big craps, big, huge elephant like type craps. So, in good faith, I just say too big, too unrealistic for most people. Uh, so the last question from the sheet is, how many reptiles is too many? How many reptiles? I'm kind of combining. How many reptiles can I safely keep as pets? How can I do a reptile rescue? Blah 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 blah. Okay, and this all stems from some reptiles, as we talked about, are cheap. Reptiles, especially if you're buying babies, are very small. So, depending on the species, they either stay small or they get bigger, but so they don't need a lot of space. Geckos, things like that, chameleons. And also, a lot of the times, if you're rescuing reptiles, a lot of times people are surrendering them for free. So you're like, well, I have one bearded dragon. Why not two? Why not three? Why not four, five, six? They're all free for you to get. Sometimes they even include the enclosure and the lights and all that. So the startup cost could be pretty cheap. But eventually, if you have 7 bearded dragons, you're going to be replacing 7 UVB bulbs. Hey, you're going to be running 7 UVB bulbs and 7 heat lights and or heat mats or fans or this or that. And now, what are you doing with all of those? Those are sociable pets. Now, some people could do this, but they can get depressed, they can get territorial, they are extremely friendly, and they want interaction. There's not enough hours in the day to interact. It becomes very expensive. It becomes very time consuming. The more you get, the less time you can spend. If you want a lot of something, get a fish tank and look at all the different fish. And they don't want to be held, you know, just they want you to throw food. But even my turtles I let out walk around. My turtles come up to the dock for me to scratch them when I walk by. They want that interaction. I've shown my turtles following me around the home. I've shown me scratching the turtles and how they get in this itchy dance. So there's not a set number because certain reptiles like less interaction than others. Okay. Yep. 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 And if space is fine and the money is not a problem for you, okay, fine. But also, typically, the standard of care goes down. What does that mean? Your feedings maybe become a little bit quicker. You don't take the time to make 80 salads. You just rip up turnip greens and throw them in there. They're not getting bell pepper. They're not getting squashes. They're not getting yellow, squash and everything, sweet potato. Oh, they pooped. Okay, I'm going to just quickly clean it. You're not doing 7 or 8 tank deep cleanings every week because that takes a lot of time. Um, so everyone's limit is different. If you've got a whole house and they're all helping you and it's not just your pet, it can be easier. But I gotta tell you, the more you get, the less time you have to devote on each one, and each one needs a minimum amount of time just to survive at the most minimum way they can survive. But then if you increase that time, they will be more friendly. They'll have out time. They're going to want to come outside. They're going to want to pet you. They're going to want to take a half hour, an hour, a 2 hour nap with you. Well, now you got 8 reptiles and they all want to take a 2 hour nap with you every day. That's 16 hours of just napping. Doesn't happen. So those are things you need to consider. But um, reptile hoarding is something that can happen very quickly. You can just buy, set up. Especially if you had one reptile and you're like, oh, this is easy. And what's better than one? Two, because I love having this one reptile. It's easy. It's easy to feed. It's easy to clean. It's easy to take out and hang out with. And so if I get two, it will be double that. Not necessarily. In fact, a lot of times it becomes half as good. And a lot of the times as you add more, the visual from the outside may look better until the tanks get dirty, but everything else goes down every time you add more. You start to lose that one-on-one really good interaction time. And it becomes expensive fast, even though the startup may not be. I think breeders should start breeding some of these import-only monitors. It's only time before cities intervene and they're lost from the hobby. I figured, well, we had that for a little bit, right? Like a lot of the import, not the import only, but no, I don't have any snails actually. Although one of our Patreons on Discord has some giant snails. Funny you bring that up. But let's look at it. From Tanzania, when they were in 2010s, when they stopped all exporting because they were being poached. Black throat monitors, white throat monitors, salves, all birds. A lot of those things we were getting, and that's why black throats became extremely rare to find in the U.S. because there were the breeders, there were the 4 or 5 breeders in the U.S., and there were other breeders in other countries, the UK and whatnot, but these lizards became very hard and very expensive. And then it was like, was it 2018, 2019, they reopened up the exporting again. But so we saw a drastic price drop, but it just shows you, yes, when you are relying on just importing. Now, loss from the hobby is different than loss from the world. But so that's a good point, because they're not going to go extinct. And in fact, a lot of the time, stopping the exportation is what actually allowed the population to recover, since legal exportation stopped because, right, they were just being captured. The eggs were being captured. You and I could go there, collect 50 eggs from the wild, hatch them in our home, sell them, and just fire them over, right? So when they stopped the legal doing of that, it was just illegal. So it slowed down drastically. But yeah, the baby black throats, the wants, the needs for a black throat, gone. Poof, plummet, down to nothing. And we see that because then people are like, well, wait, I don't want to spend $5,000 on a baby black throat. I could spend $20 on a Savannah monitor. I could spend $100 on a quince monitor. I could spend $30 on a normal bearded dragon. So the hobby demand just plummeted. Now the supply plummeted, but the demand also plummeted. And then you didn't have, you'd go on YouTube and you type in black throat monitor and you see videos from like 15 years ago about people with their very tame black throated monitors. And you're like, oh, cool. I didn't even know that existed. Now you see black throats at reptile shows. You see Savannah monitors in PetSmart and Petco. You see them on Morph Market all the time. So I don't know if something dying out from the hobby is necessarily bad, though, because there's probably certain things that shouldn't be mass in the hobby. Like, they're okay to own for sure, but they're not okay for the masses to just pick up. You saw when I got Smog, he was probably Smog and Ventress's babies, maybe as big as, my finger from here to here. Okay. Now he goes across this whole 8-foot couch. The heck's that about? Now, every time I pick him up, I'm like, oh, I used to be able to pick them both up at the same time. No chance now. No chance. He's huge. Now when we're outside and he wants to go someplace, but I don't necessarily want to go there, but he's on the ground, he's putting, boom, 1 foot goes in, claws go in the dirt. Massive amount of muscle pulling forward. I mean, you see the muscles rippling on his back. He wants to go there, and he will try his hardest to go there. Now, luckily, I can pick him up, and he can't. But when he's on the ground, he starts moving. Here's something that I think is too much in the hobby. Sulcata tortoises. People get them. They're this big. Petco, PetSmart. They have to be what? The size of a 50-cent coin to legally be allowed to sell. They're bred like crazy. Popular reptile people on YouTube breed them. And these turn into giant, just monster tortoises. They're not even the third largest. The other large ones are expensive. They're out of the place. But when you can spend $100 on a sulcata, and you're like, I'm going to have a big tortoise, you're going to have a massive machine that's going to want to dig holes that will go right through the drywall. They'll go right through a door that you've closed. I mean, they will go through these things. They need land. They eat a lot. They graze a lot. So should they be as popular in the hobby as they are? No, because people get into it. Oh, I want to have a big tortoise. It's going to be great. I'm going to have a big friend. You're going to have a nightmare. Now, if you've got a big field, you're on a big farm, you're someplace where it stays relatively warm all year round, so it can live outside for most of the year. Or maybe you can bring him inside. It's not a brumating tortoise. It's not a brumating tortoise, right? So what are you going to do? If you had a garage, you can keep him in the winter, a big shed. Okay, but see all these things you need now to make it work. It's got to be heated, and then you got to do day and night. There are things that I think are in the hobby that are too popular, unfortunately, and what leads to a lot of bad care. Because everything is so easy to care for when it's a baby. It's so small. It takes up little space. It eats very little. It has very low chance of hurting you. A sulcata tortoise or a monitor lizard that bites you when they're a baby, they won't feel anything. Okay, now what about a full-grown sulcata? Probably take your finger right off. What about a full-grown monitor lizard? Probably going to, some blood. Accidents even happen. Let's not even say the thing is vicious. It just, a sulcata is going to bite the carrot, misses, and wham. Goodbye. So sometimes the hobby, and I guess this is the last point, sometimes the hobby gets too overpopulated. I think we should have animals and take them in. If things are worried about becoming extinct, we can take them to zoos. We can do breeding programs. But the people who have reticulated pythons in their one-bedroom apartment, Burmese pythons, green anacondas, right? What are we doing? Very popular, right? Burmese and retics, very popular in the industry. Green anacondas, not so much. Yellow anacondas, not so much. But still people get them. Very popular, very cool snakes. Then you get 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, 10 foot, 11 foot, 12 foot, 100 pounds, 200 pounds. All right. So thank you guys all for coming. I got to go through that. Agreed. Rack breeding shouldn't be replicated for large. Yeah, right. Of course. So it's these mass breedings are just crazy. Thank you so much for taking the time or your animal husbandry chores to help all of us. Big hugs to you. Yes, no problem. Thankfully, I did all the reptiles before I came on here. Now I just need to tidy up a few things. I got some family coming over. We're going to play some board games today. I got a stack on Black Friday. I'm a big board game player. People in Patreon know, but basically next to me here, you can't see it, is just a giant shelving unit with like 800 board games on it that I collect from garage sales and stuff. Do I win all the time? I'd like to say yes, but it's a mixed bag, especially ones where it's just the luck of the die. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it so much. And just as I say all the time, the only thing that you guys are big helps if you recommend my videos, if you leave a like on any video you like, because remember, if you watch a video and you don't like it, YouTube thinks you didn't like it. And if you leave a dislike, YouTube thinks you hated it. And any comment, if you watch a video and you don't leave a comment, this is for anyone that you like, YouTube says the video was not engaging enough for a comment. So you can just leave a comment that says hi. And then YouTube's like, oh, they left a like, they liked it, and it was engaging. It's so stupid the way the algorithm works, but that's it. So if anyone you like on YouTube, if you watch a video and you liked it and you don't leave a comment and you don't like it, that actually crushes it. YouTube thinks you just hated that video, which is shocking to me. There will be more taming videos for sure. I'm going to show the Sav one off because I've got some other really good things I've been doing with Apollo, who PS now doesn't run away from me, doesn't hiss at me, and lets me pet him all the time. But I'll show you how I got there. And yeah, that's it. All right, guys, take care. Have a good weekend.